If you are not living under a rock, you will be aware of the latest diplomatic fallout between the US and Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's trip to Washington, D.C. was intended to secure a definitive peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia, mediated by the U.S., following 3 grueling years of relentless conflict that claimed over 1 million lives, both military and civilian. Unfortunately, talks in the Oval Office descended into a red-hot confrontation, with American President Donald Trump accusing Zelensky of being disrespectful and gambling with World War III. No foreign policy experts or international affairs analysts foresaw it devolving into a fresh diplomatic rift between the U.S. and Ukraine. This has ramifications. In this video, Defense Updates reports on the implications of a public spat between Zelensky, Vance, and Trump. Before we proceed, a word on NordVPN, which is one of the most trusted and fastest VPN brand that has a no-log policy validated by Deloitte. NordVPN provides a 256-bit encrypted tunnel that protects your privacy and also enables you to access contents that are blocked based on geolocation. Its threat protection system helps you avoid phishing, scams, and malware. NordVPN application is available for all the major platforms as well as browsers. Get an exclusive NordVPN deal with massive saving by going to nordvpn.com/defense or clicking the link in the description. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. While Russia thought it could roll over Ukraine in weeks, it didn't work out that way. The so-called special military operation has not been easy for Russia. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Russian personnel losses, encompassing both killed and wounded, exceeded 800,000 troops by early 2025. Western officials, including former U.S. leaders like Lloyd Austin and Antony Blinken, have estimated Russian losses at over 700,000 killed or injured by January 2025. Russia may have lost 10,000 tanks, 20,000 armored fighting vehicles, 23,000 artillery, a combined total of 370 Russian planes and helicopters, as well as 5 ships and 458 smaller craft. This is to a large extent because of weapons provided to Ukraine by the West, the majority of which came from the U.S. The economic impact has also been significant. Approximately $300 billion of Russia's central bank reserves were frozen as a direct consequence of Western sanctions. This figure represents roughly half of Russia's total foreign exchange reserves at the time, which stood at around $630 billion before the war. These are still frozen. Currently, ruble trades at approximately 105 to 110 against USD, which is a 40 to 47% decline from its pre-war value. If the US pulls out or limits its support, it will be much easier for Russia. In a few earlier videos, we have mentioned that President Putin will be biding his time and hoping for a change in government in the US. And this is exactly what has happened. Actually, even Russians will be surprised by how things have turned in their favor in such a short time. One might support or oppose Zelensky, but as of now, he emerges as the primary loser in the wake of this recent diplomatic misstep. While some might applaud the Ukrainian president for his defiance in the face of pressure, this boldness has ultimately dashed hopes for a peace agreement and the stability so desperately needed. Zelensky's error lay in opting for public confrontation rather than biding his time for a strategic moment during a private, closed-door bilateral discussion. Zelensky was on the cusp of a diplomatic win. He had the chance to secure a solid pledge from Trump's team and leave with a strengthened position. Instead, he exited with a fractured alliance and growing skepticism about his leadership capabilities. For years, Zelensky embodied Ukraine's unyielding spirit, a figurehead of resistance against Russian aggression. Yet in a single press conference, he revealed a critical weakness. Beyond mere frustration, a lapse into emotional volatility at a pivotal juncture. The world witnessed a leader unprepared to navigate negotiations with either foes or friends. It is important to note here that ex-President Biden had also lost temper with Zelensky in the June 2022 phone call when the Ukrainian leader asked for more aid. Zelensky's options are limited. Even though most European countries have come out in public support of Zelensky on social media, will they finance his endless war or help bring a peace deal to the table? Firstly, many European countries have acted as hawks in the last few years, and yet sponsor the Russian war machinery by buying record-high Russian gas in the first 2 months of 2025. Secondly, the military readiness of European countries is not optimum. If Zelensky thinks he can fight the war with only the help of the European Union and without US support, then he is wrong. Technically, Zelensky and Ukraine are standing between a rock and a hard place. While Zelensky may sign the mineral deal in the coming days when the situation cools down, he and his people will be circumspect about the kind of support they may receive going forward. Ukraine's losses are mounting, and sustaining this war is going to be very, very difficult. The United States has long positioned itself as a net security provider, especially since World War II, through its leadership in NATO, extensive military presence worldwide, and commitments to allies. This role involves deploying forces, providing defense guarantees, and maintaining stability in regions critical to global security, often at significant cost to itself, with the aim of fostering a rules-based international order. After 1945, the U.S. emerged as a superpower, establishing institutions like NATO and the United Nations to secure Western interests and counter Soviet influence. It stationed troops in Europe and Asia to deter aggression, rebuild allies, and stabilize regions, actions that defined it as a net provider of security. During the Cold War, the U.S. invested heavily in military bases, over 800 at its peak. Nuclear deterrence and proxy wars to contain communism, often prioritizing global stability over immediate national gain. This included defending Europe via NATO's Collective Defense Pact and supporting South Korea in the Korean War. Several sections in political circles of many different nations will see recent developments, including this public spat, as the U.S. leaving an ally in the middle of nowhere. The sharp difference in policies between the Biden and Trump administrations will exacerbate their concerns. It is as if there is no continuity. Already, there are talks in Europe about strengthening the military and expanding nuclear deterrence. France is reportedly exploring the option of stationing air-launched nuclear weapons in Germany. Viewers can check that video from the above card. Nuclear proliferation will be an unintended consequence of Donald Trump's policies. South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan could be joining the club as America continues to disengage. If the U.S. isolates itself, these countries will see nukes as the only viable security guarantee.